Welcome to Roadmaps, the podcast for Texas local agencies and the firms that support them to plan, design, build, and maintain local roads. On Roadmaps, we break down design, mix types, construction, and maintenance, sharing plain-spoken, practical insights you can put to work right away. Asphalt is a flexible pavement, engineered for optimum performance, so your community gets stronger, safer, longer-lasting roads. The Roadmaps philosophy is simple. Stay flexible. Enjoy today's episode. Welcome to this episode of Roadmaps. Our topic is quality control and quality assurance. But let's go ahead and start with our safety share.
This episode's safety share is about summer road trips, and all the things we need to do is we get the family in the car and go out and see America. First thing you want to do is make sure the air conditioner works. If you've been across the South, you'll know how important that is. You want to make sure all your belts and hoses and all the fluids have been checked. Make sure your tires and brakes are in good condition. Make sure you got a battery. We ran out of that and had that problem last year in Louisiana. And the last thing we want to make sure is that you have a plan of where you're going, where you're staying, and where you're going to eat, and where you're going to have fun. Thank you. And now let's get into this episode's topic.
So Dennis, today we're talking about quality control and quality assurance. I mean, that's our title, but quality control, quality assurance, quality acceptance. I think a lot of times people might think, well, that's all one and the same. And while there's similarities, and there's some things that fit in quality control and quality assurance, there's definitely some defined roles, responsibilities. You've got producers and contractors that are building roads. You've got your local agencies that we call the owners. I mean, they own the road. They're the customer that the road's being built for. But each one of those has different roles in terms of how are we making sure that this project is sticking to the specifications, the plans, how it was put together, how it was bid, how it was constructed, and how it was accepted. So, like for instance, why don't we start with quality control? QC, by the way, QC, QA, right?
Yeah.
And, so why don't we talk about, kind of kick it off with quality control?
Yeah, quality control is very important. You know, quality is very important to us at TxAPA. You know, we have a robust quality pavement awards program we're very proud of, and so it starts with quality control. And typically we always like to say it's everyone's responsibility, but from a contractual standpoint, it usually falls directly onto the producer and the placer's responsibility on what they're supposed to do. To make sure we are getting the road that we want built out there.
And how do they do that?
Well, it all starts with the quality control plan. We advocate that this needs to be in writing, and it needs to be robust. It needs to name names on who's going to do what part of the functions for QC, and it needs to be done beforehand. We do not want to try to invent this while we have material and men and equipment in the field. That's definitely, we need to do that beforehand. It also includes a variety of other things, the material submittals, mix designs, things like that. Another big component, pre-pave meetings, to make sure that we talk about everything that's in that quality control plan. When are we going to run certain tests? Who's going to run those tests? Who's going to be responsible for reporting to the data and to whom? And just to make sure that we also, we run a test, we want it to be repeatable, but then make sure we have the right forms and checklists and all those things there so we can do it in an organized manner as well. Yeah,
and you mentioned pre-pave meetings and how really important those things are. And again, I think when we're talking, we're doing all this stuff we're really, our emphasis on local agencies, and a lot of times we look at what TxDOT does, and it's kind of a different process, and it's a very, very thorough process. But then there's a lot of variability between local agencies about how they go about, prosecuting this work. And the pre-pave meetings, I mean, to me, it gives you a chance before you're out there, kind of on the battlefield, so to speak, of developing scenarios about, okay, if this happened, as you said, who is going to do what and what is that process? But also, if something happens that you either don't want or didn't expect, it gives you an opportunity in advance to say, this is what we're going to do if this was to come up, rather than being out there in the field and you didn't discuss it, and then
it's a surprise to everybody.
It's a surprise to everybody, and It's a lot easier to talk about things. If you and I are having a conversation, hey, we're going to go do this thing, and here's how it's going to go when we do it, as opposed to you and I go out there, we might be putting a tent up to go camping, and we didn't talk about putting the tent up, and we get out there and we end up, and it's not going well. We're going to get mad at each other.
We are, and as a dad of a Cub Scout, we've had those fights.
Exactly, so me too. I was too.
You want to make it look like we've done this before,
yeah.
and a lot of that starts with the quality control, clear communication, everything like that. You want to know, do we have a tent? Does the paver, does it work? Is it maintained? And who's going to run it? All those things we need to talk about beforehand.
Yeah, I think that's important, and we talk about this a lot, and we have these local agency conferences we do, MAPS program it's called, and we have an entire section and presentation that talks about the importance of these types of things. So I guess as a plug that we would urge all local agencies that are watching this, if you're an owner or working for an agency and you're representing that owner, you might be a lab that's or a consulting firm that has a contract with the city or a county. Make sure that you have a pre-pave meeting as part of the program before you get going.
And a written quality control plan.
And a written quality control plan, absolutely. And so, quality control, though, what are the aspects for asphalt paving on quality control?
So we're going to do a lot of things. We're going to look at the material production, and if we go back to the TxDOT side of the world, there's a suite of tests that we run to make sure that we are producing the material of the quality that we want to build with. And then that will be transported over. The quality control plan should also include some trucking mechanism, because we have to move that mix from the plant to the field. And then we'll also have that process outlined at the field when we get the material delivered. How are we going to get it in front of the paver? How are we going to get it paved? And all those things that we're going to have to do, checking temperature, checking compaction, all those things that make sure the contractor is following the process they need to have.
Yep, because a lot of that quality control is on the contractor, but let's just make sure that it's understood.
Absolutely.
Who's doing what, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when and how frequently we're going to test, all those things will be built into that plan.
That's really important. And then, so then we have quality assurance, or the acceptance side of things, and that's a little bit different. Now, there are some testing, particularly,
Yes. So a lot of the tests are going to be the same tests,
right.
But the reason why we run them on different side of the QC/QA fence has a completely different objective. One, we're looking at process control, and the other one we're looking at some other type things. Can we accept this work?
What we have seen, and this is kind of it's an issue. I think that a lot of times we will see a local agency, and I hear this all the time, and I know you did too, and you were, operating in this world where the agency, the owner, their form of quality acceptance, quality assurance, is that they're going to take contractor results as, contractor test results. I'm not saying that there's it's better than doing nothing at all. However, you still want, if you're going to be accepting contractor test results, producer test results, as your form of quality assurance, quality acceptance, you need to have some things in there to make sure that you are getting what it is you're buying, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. One of our things is making sure that the technician running the tests on the quality control side, if they are going to be used for acceptance, or regardless of what they're going to be used for acceptance or not, to make sure they're qualified and certified. Now, there's a pretty detailed certification process for the 1A specialists at the plant and the 1B roadway specialists to make sure that they are capable and they have the right equipment to run those tests.
Yeah. There's a lot of old sayings, right? We hear about it. And one you hear quite a bit is, we don't do what's expected, we do what's inspected, right? And I always say this because it's true, and I really mean it. Most contractors, producers, contractors, certainly the ones that are members of TechSAPA, they want to do a good job. They want to build a good project. You know, they take pride in their work, and so they don't have a problem with the fact that you're going to test their material. And, you know, a lot of times that testing is not on, it might be on a slightly different scale from what the quality control function is, right? I mean, the quality acceptance could be, you know,
different frequency.
Right, different frequency.
No, but you're right. I mean, these guys, they're going to have their name on a sign leading up to the job, and you know that's something they want to stand behind.
In testing, you know, another old saying, what is it?
Yeah, one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions. Yeah. That mentor used to remind us of that. You know, we don't want to guess, just run a test and figure out. And, you know, we want to look at, can we accept this road? Well, let's find out. Run some tests and see what we have.
Yeah, I mean, we call it owner verification
for a reason.
You know, trust but verify, and I think that's just like a lot of other processes when you're building a pavement. You know, you want to have all these things built into it so that everybody is getting what they wanted. The contractor is getting the opportunity to build a really good project. The owner has some things in there in place in terms of testing and reporting that they can hang their hat on. Everybody sleeps better at night.
Yeah, you know, it all starts with, you know, a clear specification to outline what level we're going to do and who's going to do it and which you know, how we're going to lay that piece of it out. But definitely want to make sure that we have that discussed beforehand.
Yep. You know, so we have inspection, right? And we have testing. That's a whole nother thing. You know, a lot of times those get lumped in together. Well,
and sometimes it may be the same guy doing it.
It might be the same person doing it.
Yeah, but part of, you know, a testing technician would, you know, that's someone that's actually going to run a test, a standardized test using a series of equipment, whether that's a density gauge or a straight edge or a thermometer. You know, to measure certain things. And, you know, inspection, we look at that as someone that's observing and documenting a process. Was the process followed? And there's a nuanced difference there. So just having an inspector on the job that doesn't have the credentials to run tests is not necessarily the best way to do it.
Right. And, you know, conversely, there are some of these test functions that technically that certified technician that is running that test is not really necessarily an inspector. No. Now, they may have been around a long time and they may know what they're looking at, and they may be able to see through empirical data and years of experience, they're watching something going on and they can say, when I run the test after they're done, that test is going to fail because they have the knowledge to be an inspector. But there's also folks that may be a little greener, they're certified, they can run the test perfectly, which is what you want. You want that test and you want the results from running that test to be accurate and repeatable. But there is a bit of a difference between an inspector sometimes and a tester. And we see a lot of times, I think, again with local agencies where the contractor has folks that know what they're doing, but a lot of times the owner doesn't have a good rep out there on their behalf, whether it's internal staff for that agency or if they don't have that person, then they ought to have some kind of outside help. There's a lot of good, what we call testing labs out there. That's what they do. They go out, they collect samples, they run tests, and they are representing the owner on the owner's behalf, doing the similar tests that are being done by the contractor. But, you know, it's important that, I think that any agency should make sure that somebody who is representing them, whether they're in-house or an outside consultant, have experience as an inspector that they're watching what's going on, right? They're observing the process, I guess.
Yeah, and, you know, did we pave in the right location, the right widths, and all those things that may not necessarily show up on a random test, for sure.
So, you know, we've been talking about the difference between inspection and testing, but Dennis, we didn't talk about some of the key tests that are done. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What are the tests?
Yeah, so at the plant, we want to know, are the material producing what we expect, what was in the submittals, and so one of the things we're going to look at is the gradation, what we're looking for. So we'll test that, and then we'll also want to make sure that we have the asphalt volumes that are in there. We'll also look at the Can you compact it to get the density that we're looking for in a lab environment under ideal conditions, using a Pre-Pave gyratory press? And so those are some of the big ones that we'll do during production. And then while we're placing the material, we're going to look at temperatures all along the way. When it shows up, the temperature directly leads to compaction. And then our densities, where we're at, we're going to establish, or someone on the QC side should establish a rolling pattern for us, so we can kind of figure out to make sure that process is working. And really, we're looking for density and thermal segregation, and making sure that we have our joints, the density along the longitudinal joint in the right spot. And a lot of those are density related tests, and temperature are very important in the field.
Yep, and the temperature is critically important. And if you are, a lot of agencies will refer to a TxDOT spec. They say they want TxDOT mix. And so if you have, you should have the latest TxDOT spec. Say it's a dense graded mix, that's item 341 now. We've developed a local agency specification we talked about in a previous podcast called 341M. But in there, it gives things about ranges of temperatures, what's the maximum it can be produced at, what's the minimum it needs to be when it's being placed.
Should we even pave today?
Yeah, should we even pave today? What are the ambient conditions? What's going on in terms of that temperature? What is the temperature when we allow traffic to get on it? It has to cool to a certain level before we're allowed to let traffic on it. And all those things are incorporated into a good, thorough specification. So
and at the end of all that process, we'll pull a core.
Talk about coring.
So
tell somebody what a core is.
What a core is. So we'll actually go out there and actually you want to make sure the right temperature. You do not want to core a hot pavement, but we'll pull an actual core that will tell us a lot of things about the pavement. We can run a density check on it, a thickness check on it, to see did we in effect meet this finished product requirements that we're looking for.
Yes. Yeah, and then that core should have the properties that relate back to that initial mix design that was approved and the kind of asphalt that was being put down on that, so that you talked about gradation. That's the distribution of the different size of the rocks that are in there, the percent of asphalt binder, the glue that holds it together is put in at a certain percentage and approved in a mix design. And that roadway core can be, you can take that and go back and check, is what's out there, what was produced, and what was supposed to have been produced.
Yeah, and so that core will help us also correlate a lot of more frequent density gauge tests that we'll run, and that's a small handheld device that we don't need to pull a core for, but we can collect obviously a lot more of those tests, and a core will help us tie all that together.
Yep, and we'll look for all those things you mentioned, segregation and those types of things. And we can't pave an entire, if you've got 2 lanes and it's 24 feet, there's not one paver is going to pave 24 feet wide. So we create these things that are called joints, right? And joint density and proper joint construction. We could spend the next 2 hours talking about that, Dennis, but that's really important that we get proper density and all that, and that is part of not just the QC function, but it's a big part of that quality acceptance, quality assurance function.
Absolutely.
Well, great. Well, thanks for pointing out some of the tests.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, Dennis, it's time for our top 10 list. Top 10 reasons why you want to have a quality control and quality assurance program.
Number 10, because one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions.
Reason number 9. You want to sleep at night knowing you got what you paid for.
Absolutely. Number 8, we want to know what they did and what they built.
Number 7, we want to know if you made some mistakes that they got fixed.
Absolutely. Reason number 6, we want to know that they know what they're doing.
Reason number 5, we have to make sure that we use the best quality materials.
Number 4, so we can vouch for the quality of the work. Number
3, you need confidence in long-term quality so that you know the road will last.
And number 2, it's always good to have built-in accountability with testing and some documentation.
And the number 1 reason you want to have a good quality control and quality assurance program is so we can win the TxSAPA Quality Pavement Award.
Absolutely. And now for our project of the month. This month, we're going to highlight Brazos Bend State Park, Park Road 72. It's down in the Houston area. I hope you get out there to visit it this summer, see some alligators. It was a 4.5-mile project, mill overlay and base repair. It's a great looking job. Thank you. If you'd like more information and resources, please go to our local agency hub on texasasphalt.org. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Road Maps.
And remember,
Stay flexible. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Road Maps.
If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to like and subscribe. And follow us on our social media channels at Texas Asphalt Paving Association.
Stay flexible, and we'll see you next time.